right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conversion Chronicles. This is our fourth episode.
Absolutely.
And today we will be talking about a success story with Jim Gano, who is the owner of Crown Trophy. And we're going to talk about building a business from the ground up. For those of you who don't know us and you haven't been following yet, and this is your first episode, my name is Desiree Halleck. I am the owner of Clarent Services. Clarent is a digital marketing agency. We are in New Jersey, but we serve everyone almost around the world. We actually have somebody in Switzerland right now working with us. And we are best known for the Webinar Bee service, where if you as a business owner need to produce a webinar, we will take care of all the headaches and time of setting up the webinar, all the logistics and all the promotions, and all you do is show up and present on the day of your webinar. My background is I started actually my career in neuroscience. I then switched to marketing about 15 years ago and started my own business about 4 years ago. So I've definitely done a 180, and I have a very data-driven approach from a marketing standpoint because of my science background. How about you, Prem?
Thank you, Desiree, for that wonderful introduction. So as Desiree said, my name is Prem Kumar. I've been so I'm the owner of Efficace Consulting. It's a boutique strategic consulting enterprise here in town. And I work with small businesses, a lot of them in life sciences, but non-life sciences entities. And I do strategic planning. And also from an execution perspective, I work with the team to how best to execute whatever their strategic plan to grow and build their business. But my experience-wise, I've been in this field for over 30 years, and I've been strategizing all my life because I started my career way back I landed here March 10th, 1989 with $250 in my pocket. I didn't know a soul, and I was knocking doors in Manhattan, and I had to strategize every hour just to
survive.
To survive. Yeah. So I've been strategizing for the last 30 years, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's become a pretty natural entity for me. So, but my goal here is to help small businesses grow and make their potential. So,
and the goal of this podcast is to bring marketing and sales together.
Yep.
Because in a lot of businesses, they work in silos and they do not communicate as much as they are supposed to.
Absolutely.
To be most efficient. And so we are really the only podcast that in every single episode, we talk about both marketing and sales and how they can work together to be the most efficient for your business.
Especially given the new dynamics after COVID, the changing market dynamics, the marketplace, the way you do business.
Remote working, yeah.
The stakeholder collaboration becomes that much critical. So.
Absolutely. So I had a rough week last week. My dog died.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Of 14 years. His name was Oscar. He was a beautiful little puppy. I called him my firstborn because he's older than my children. And so, yeah, it just, I'm grateful for the distraction of this and everything else in work. Because if you sit there and kind of, drown in your misery, then it gets harder. So that was my week last week.
It's always tough to have somebody close to you like that.
I have to say,
I've lost family members that didn't mean as much as my dog.
So that's what I almost have guilt in me for being so upset over this. And I've had grandparents that pass away, and I guess because you're expecting them to go, and 4 days before he died, the vet said, "Your dog is super healthy," and he died of throat cancer 4 days later. Like, how does that even happen? So it was more my expectations were set. We have a few more years out of them, right? And so anyway, it was a good, we don't really realize happiness until you have sadness. Mm-hmm. It's all relative. So that was my sadness for the year, I hope.
Well, it makes you stronger.
Yeah, it totally does. It definitely does. So just to review our episode last week, so we went over goal setting last week, and we sort of talked about how you should always review the year before. So we kind of went over a review of 2023. We talked about what goals you should be or you are setting for 2024, and more importantly, when you set goals, what types of strategies do you have in place And we went over the SMART kind of technique of setting your goals and making sure that they're achievable and time bound and all of the good stuff. So if you didn't watch that episode, you haven't set your goals yet for 2024, make sure that you look up our episode. That was episode 3 on Spotify. So it is definitely posted now. So just make sure your goals are clear and they're concise, they're measurable, attainable, and your team is fully aligned, and there's no reason why you shouldn't reach them.
Right.
Our next episode will be talking about how you can strategically plan to reach your goals.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
Stay tuned for episode 5 in 2 weeks from now. In the meantime, let's introduce our honorable speaker, our guest, Jim Gano, who is the owner of Crown Trophy. Prem, I'll let you do the intro.
Thanks Desiree for the synopsis of last episode that we had. But as Desiree said, Jim is a very successful entrepreneur in Flemington as the owner of Crown Trophy for the last 14 years. Is that right? In addition, he has written 2 books, both fiction. He has served on different committees and boards, was an EMT at the Green Knoll Rescue Squad in Bridgewater, and he's on the Bridgewater Raritan High School Athletic Hall of Fame committee. You're also another Hall of Fame from your alma mater, right?
Yep.
Wow.
He's volunteered for the Somerset County Special Olympics and for the 5 years as was its chairman. At one point, he was the announcer for the Somerset Patriots. That must have been exciting.
That was a good time.
That's awesome.
And for the past 40 years, announced football and basketball games in Bridgewater Raritan School, his alma mater. But he also hosts on Thursdays something that I would recommend everybody to listen to, which is Taking Care of Business with Jim Gano. I believe it's at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock on Thursday.
1 o'clock on Thursday, and it gets streamed live on Facebook, and of course, I'm sure it's on other platforms that you can get to. But just academically, Jim has studied broadcast communication in Salem College in West Virginia. Eventually, landed in trophy business, which he's run for 14 years. So here to talk about his success, and of course, he'll outline some of the challenges that he went through and how he overcome them. So it's going to be a very interesting episode here. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Prem. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Great to have you here. So let's kick it off.
I feel like you're part of the FBI. You know a lot about me that I forgot already.
The Secret Service.
Secret Service,
Prem.
exactly.
Look out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that.
I did do that. There we go. So let's just jump into it. Let's have a brief overview of your business journey leading up to where you are today. But I'm interested in knowing how this whole business concept or the entrepreneur spirit came into you as a kid growing up.
As a kid, when I was 13 years old, this was 1974. My father was a union electrician. My mother was a teacher, and she was a coach, and she got hurt. She ended up having 2 back surgeries over 18 months, so she wasn't working. My father, being a union electrician with the OPEC oil embargo of that time, there was no construction going on. So there was no money coming into the house. My sister had a job in a deli and a butcher shop and a little grocery store. So I lied about my age and got a job there as well. And what I would do is, now times were much different than they are today.
Right.
My parents had a 4-bedroom house, and the mortgage was that they bought for $33,000 in Bridgewater. Good luck trying to get that today. And the mortgage was $133 a month.
Wow.
I was making about $125, every 2 weeks. And so what I did was I just went over after I got my paycheck. I would cash it at the bank, bring the money to my father, and then give him the money. And that's how we paid the mortgage for about 18 months. Uh-huh. And, I would take out a little bit of money for myself because I like chocolate chip cookies at the high school, or wherever, at whatever school I was at. So that got me started. And the work ethic starts with my parents.
Yeah.
Started with my grandfather. He opened an electrical contracting business in Somerville that's still open today, 102 years later. My cousin Jeff runs it, called Hockenberry Electric. And so we've always had a very strong work ethic. And then I did a number of different jobs, summer jobs. I stayed with that deli for like 5 years. Worked in a plastics factory. When I got to college, I was in maintenance. My job was to cut the football field and, paint and things like that. But I've never been afraid of work. And then after college, I had a job as a weekend TV news anchor, and the station was sold, and they got rid of everybody. And I'm here like, great, I just graduated. I have no job. Felt like Bill Murray in Stripes. And so I hightailed it home and tried to get a sense of what I was going to be doing. And I got a job with an insurance company. And I said, all right, while I'm doing insurance, I'll still try to figure out what I'm going to do with the broadcasting end. And so I worked through that industry for 10 years. In between, one of the local high schools hired me as their football and basketball announcer. The other school in that town also hired me. And that just started my announcing career. I've worked in radio and television. And then got out of the insurance industry and started doing turnarounds for small lumber yards that were facing stiff competition with Home Depot. They were 2-year contracts. And then at the end of the last contract, Home Depot called me. And they were like, well, we see what you're doing for them. We want you to do that for us. And it was just a way. What it basically was they wanted me out of the picture. If I'm under the corporate umbrella, I can't be
make you happy, so you're not
right.
disrupting
I mean,
them.
I was doubling the sales of the local lumber yards when a Home Depot, the closest one, was 400 yards away, and they couldn't beat us. And the way they couldn't beat us was in our service. They could beat us on price, but they couldn't beat us on the quality.
Yeah.
Because they had crap lumber.
Sure.
And
Mass
better price.
produced.
Yeah. So I was like, I like what I got. So after that contract ended, a friend of mine owned a recruiting business, and I said, here's my resume. If you know of anybody who could use me, let me know. And he calls me the next day and says, I think I can use you. So I became a recruiter for 8 years in the pharmaceutical industry, building, recruiting MDs, PharmDs, PhDs, and building medical science liaison teams. And there were 1,100 offices worldwide. When I came in, I was the number 5,000 recruiter. When I left, I was somewhere real close. If I wasn't number one, I was real close to number one because I was just outbilling everybody. And then from there, I was always how I got into Crown Trophy was I was always the dad that would buy the trophies for the soccer teams and the leagues and the baseball leagues. And getting to know a former Crown Trophy franchisee, one day he just said, do you want to buy my business? And I was like, well, let's take a look at this. And, I looked at his financials and they were good. And then I just said, okay, I'm ready to buy. So we went through a whole negotiation process. The next thing you know, he sells it to somebody else.
Ooh.
So I called corporate and pitched a fit. I said, this guy has just cost me about $5,000 in attorneys and accountants and everything else. I said, I want my money back or I want that franchise. They invited me up there and they said, look, that deal's done, but we'll give you a franchise, and I guess it's either because I was too mad or something, but, I said that's not the right way to play, just because you pick somebody prettier than me, and someone who had more money. And then they said, well, find a place that you can do business. And initially I said Bridgewater because that's my hometown.
Right.
That was too close to the other store's territory, so I moved it west and came to Flemington. And they said, yeah, that'll work. And so then that's how I ended up in the trophy business.
There you go.
So what was your inspiration behind, I feel like you have such a diverse background. It's not only like entrepreneurship,
absolutely.
it's so many things.
Right.
So like share the story behind like what inspired, that was like, this is my goal. I want to do this. Like what was that?
I've always been the guy who, like in the recruiting business, in the consulting business, I was always the guy that was really good at making money for other people. Or my bosses, or the people who would hire me on the contract basis. And I was like, what if I started doing it for me? And I was at the time, so we've been in business for 15 years this year. And at the time that would have put me at around, late 40s. Kids were growing. It was time to look for something that I could do because I'm the type of person that when I achieve a goal, I look around, it's kind of like climbing Mount Everest.
What's next?
More people die on the way down from Everest than on the way up, because they didn't prepare for the down.
No.
So you get to the top, you look around and say, hey, good view. Now what? And like you said, what's next is probably my favorite phrase. I use it from President Jeb Bartlett on the West Wing because he would always say, what's next? And I do the same thing. I finish a project, what's next?
Yeah.
And, so I looked around and I was like, okay, great, you're number one. It's time for another challenge. And so then I got into the Crown Trophy, and now I'm one of 150 franchises, some of which have been open 30 or 40 years. So I've always looked at it like I have a lot of catching up to do. And I don't necessarily need to be number one with them as much as I have to be the best version of us, here and serve the community and make money for my employees, make money for me, and, keep the business running. And so many businesses fail in the first 3 to 5 years. So to be here 15 years later, we're doing okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. I mean, the nuggets that you've been getting from Jim has been outstanding, because if you go back to some of the things that he mentioned about how he became, what he is today, he just started with something. He didn't have this master plan, but he just
got to start somewhere.
And then he worked his way up. And the other thing I picked up from his narration was that he focused on what was at hand. He became good at what he was doing. In other words, there was no complaining. There was no, I should get that job. Just focus on what you're doing.
Yep. Right? Put your blinders on, move forward.
Move forward.
That's what I call plan A versus plan B.
There you go.
And I focus all my energies on plan A, which is my current job. And I've worked with people who will have the side hustle, that plan B. And I'm not being sexist here, but I have worked with women that sold baskets and candles and every little thing that's sitting in my pantry at home now, because my wife went to all those parties. And I could hear them during work hours, calling people, hey, can I host a party at your house? Can I host a party? Would you buy some of this? And I'm sitting there going, if you would spend that much effort and energy on your real job, you'd be killing it.
Yeah.
But they don't, and they don't realize that all of a sudden, and what happens is now all of a sudden I get elevated. I'm billing and cashing in and things like that. My ranking is growing and they're staying down. And even though they had 5-10 years more experience than I did, I'm going up, they're plateauing or going down. And when they look at you and they say, oh, you're so lucky.
No. There you go.
I busted my butt to get here. I worked in the recruiting field where I would come in at like 6 or 7 in the morning to leave voicemails for the CEOs and the presidents because their secretaries weren't there to block me.
There you go.
Or I would stay after 5 o'clock or from home and call the people on the West Coast. So my work day was 14, 15 hours a day. I didn't get lucky. I worked a different angle, worked my tail off.
I feel also that there's commonalities with these success stories, and even Prem with your story, Jim's story, even my story. Desperation is sometimes a motivator, right?
Absolutely.
And like for you landed here with $250 in your pocket. And look at you now. It's just like, how does that happen? How can you take, I remember this old story about somebody taking a penny and just keeps trading up for a penny and ended up a millionaire just from trading back and forth. And for me, it was all about, I started my business. I quit a very well-paying corporate job before I started Clarent, got a divorce, COVID hit. I was homeschooling my kids because of COVID, running a brand new business. I'm like, what the hell did I just do? But it worked and I grew every year, and it just but I was desperate. I needed to put food on the table. Right. I needed to boost myself back up, and it worked. And so even your story about helping your parents pay the mortgage, I mean, that builds character, right? And that makes you work hard. And so and everything else, family, the compadre and the trust that you build as you go along, the confidence that you build. Yes. But it's fascinating. So, so I'm sure, Jim, you faced a lot of challenges. I know you give the rosy picture about how successful you've been. But please, if you don't mind, highlight some of the biggest challenges you faced when starting the business, and I'm sure you had some while you building the business.
Sure. I mean, so this is 15 years ago, and in that time, while owning and running the business, I've had 3 hernia surgeries. I've had a cataract replacement surgery. I've had knee surgeries. I've had a knee replacement, and other health issues. And each one of those times, you're out of the office. So that's when I lean on my team. Okay, I'm out. I'll be back as soon as I can, maybe a week if it's a knee surgery or something like that. It's yours. You run it. And they do a great job every time. I've had the challenge of having a bad landlord where the sewer in my store would back up. And it wasn't like a puddle from an overflowing toilet. This was an inch of raw sewage in the rear of my store. And this happened 30 times over the course of 10 years, and we're fighting back and forth, and he's not doing anything about it. And at one point, they tried to make a fix where they came into the store. I had to move everything out. They dug down 7 feet, put in new pipelines. The problem was that fixed the internal, didn't fix the external problems. And so we still had the sewer backups. And so finally we moved out of that location. We moved into our current location in the post office building here in Flemington. But with each of those challenges, it's like whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah. And, so you just had to work through it and say, okay, and I remember I'm a big NASCAR fan. Mm-hmm. And so one of my favorite drivers was a guy named Davey Allison, who unfortunately was tragically killed in a helicopter crash. But he had a sign in his office that I repeat to myself. I repeat a lot of things to myself every morning to get me going. But his saying was, ain't nothing going to happen today that me and the Lord can't handle. So I'm like, go ahead, throw it at me. You want to back up my sewer? Go ahead. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to become the highest paid janitor in Flemington as I mop all this stuff out the back door. But I'm going to still be open. I'm going to work through it. I'm going to figure out a way. And there were times when we would bring work home with us, assembling medals or trophies, just because what we couldn't get done during the day, I had to get done. But I look at any challenge and it's like, is that all you got? Next, but we're deadline driven. So I can't tell the customer that their trophies aren't ready on Friday when they need them for Saturday morning because we had a sewer backup. Yep. I have to complete the task, or we do.
Wow.
So, that's awesome.
So what core principles and values have really guided you in building and growing your business, would you say?
Lou Holtz said it best. He was the legendary Notre Dame football coach. Yeah. And he said, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And that's how I approach how we treat our customers, how we run the business. I do not, and you could audit me today, and you will find an invoice for everything that we've ever produced. I don't say, well, here's somebody just pay me $100 cash and stick it in the pocket, and the government doesn't have to know about it. I pay the taxes, and I do the right thing. We go over and above for our customers. There are some customers that have had to pick up orders at my house because they live too far away, and a trip to Flemington back and forth is an hour trip. It was like, just meet me at my house at 7:00. But we always put the customer first. We always, it's a fair price for a great product, and so it's really just about being customer focused and making sure that we're doing more than the average person would. And my father had a great saying that he used to teach my sisters and I end it with on my radio show every week when he said, never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best. And if you love it. And so if you start there, and you can apply that to business, you can apply it to sports, you can apply it to life, relationships. So if you break that down, never let it rest until your good is better. So he says, good is good, but can you do more? Yeah. And then can you do more? And he would work me out in football, and I might catch 8 out of 10 passes. That was good.
But you can do better.
9 would be better. 10 would be best. And we would just keep working that way. And you could hand in a book report, and I would, listening to his words in my head, I'd hand in a book report, and after I typed it, I would be like, that's good. Oh wait, if I had this paragraph, it's better. And then, but when I handed in an assignment, that was the best I could possibly do.
Yeah.
And so when you think about your team now, tell us the story of how you grew your team. Like, where did you start? Did you start with some money in your pocket so you could hire a bunch of people, or was it you? And then where are you at now in terms of building your team? And then what types of attributes did you look for in team members for hiring?
Same thing happened in my recruiting business. I met with the president of a pharmaceutical company, and he sat me down, and the big thing there was retention. The average employee was lasting 2.5 years, and he wanted to get to that 3rd or 4th or 5th year so that their investment in them was returning some dividend. Yeah. because just about the time they get to 2 years, 2.5,
Got to retrain.
training is good, but now they can kind of work on their own. And so I asked him, I said, what are you looking for? And he goes, here's what I want. Find me people that played high school or college sports on a team, not an individual sport. He didn't want the tennis player. He didn't want first chair violin. He wanted team players because they have to work with sales, with marketing, with legal.
show up.
There you go.
Right.
And show up,
and deliver.
Yeah.
You know, they have to, if I have to do a certain portion of the project, when we meet next week, I better be ready. You know, I can't come to that meeting and say, didn't get to it, you know, because I'm letting the rest of the team down unless letting the project down.
Right.
And so what I look for are people, I don't necessarily care whether or not they played sports. Do they have the desire to work? Do they want to work? Are they going to put in a full day? And I'll get into that in a minute. But, you know, and Rex Tillerson, who used to be the Secretary of State under President Trump, when he was interviewed on 60 Minutes, said it great. And it also ties into the drama Yellowstone, where he said, I ride for the brand. And he was talking about his experience as an Eagle Scout, but he talked more about historically, like cattle ranching. And so if a rancher hired you, you rode for the brand the whole season. And then at the end of the year, you either said, okay, I'm done, I'm going up the road to the next ranch, or you came back the following year. And in Yellowstone, they have the part where they brand you on the left chest, and that means you have employment for life. Fortunately, I'm not that barbaric, you know, in my business.
Like tenure.
You know, but it's one of those things where if you put when I speak to corporations, I say the same. I start with the same exercise. Give me a line out of President Kennedy's inauguration speech, and everybody will say the same one. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Change the word country with company, and then say that line.
Yeah.
Ask not what your company can do for you. Ask what you can do for your company. And if you give it all you got, you're putting in your 8 hours, and I mean 8 hours, you know, and you're giving it everything you have, and your coworkers are doing the same thing. That company's just going to rise up.
Right.
Yeah.
The Harvard did a study several years ago, about 4, that said the average employee is only productive 5.25 hours per day.
Wow.
Which means you're losing almost 14 hours a week, almost 800 hours a year.
Yeah.
And when you boil that down to the ridiculous, your employees are only productive 9 months out of the year.
Wow.
What could your company do
To improve
if you had that other 3 months, you know,
Yeah.
as far as sales, as far as productivity, as far as, you know, knocking out the competition.
So when you look at your leadership style, for me, I'm the opposite of a micromanager. I sort of like,
Delegate.
here, fly birdie and figure it out, and then tell me how you did it when you start flying,
Sure.
kind of thing. That's not always the best way to, you know, to kind of guide your employees. But I just trust in people to do their job because I was always trusted and I did a good job. I feel like throughout any of my jobs growing up, it didn't matter what it was. Right. It's not really the case with these the younger generations. And I don't know, it's very difficult for me to like adapt to that.
Right.
So what is your leadership style? Like, are you micromanager?
No.
Are you in the middle? Are you
Definitely not
know?
a micromanager. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. I don't throw things. And I've worked for people that do.
Yeah.
You know, I worked for one gentleman, and he was constantly berating the employees. I'm like, why do these people come back tomorrow?
Yeah.
You know, he's like,
Exactly.
I'm not taking it. And he berated me one time, and I was a contractor. This was one of the turnarounds, and I said, he left for lunch. And I said, Wayne, when you come back from lunch, we have 2 decisions to make. Either you're going to fire me or I'm going to quit. But this is my last day. Because I wasn't going to be treated like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And he came back and he was whistling. He goes, you're right, Jimmy. You're fired. I go, okay. Let me say goodbye to your father. Let me say goodbye to the department heads. This is my last day. I'll be out of here at 5 o'clock. And I walked away. I probably got 12 phone calls from him after I left. Can you please come back? You know, nobody's following your systems. Nobody's doing this. Everybody's upset. And I'm like, if you want me back, it's going to cost you double what you were paying me. And I want
Good
a
for
car.
you.
And I want 6 weeks vacation.
Yeah.
You know, it made it impossible
Yeah.
to go back. But so I'm more nurturing in nature and more, if you make a mistake and it's going to cost us money, you know, on some of our crystal pieces, you make a mistake, you know, there's all the profit in the job if we're not losing money. I will gather the whole team around, and because we all are cross-trained, and I'll say, this is what happened. And I'm not doing that to embarrass the person. This is what happened. This is what we could have done to avoid that.
Yep.
You know, if we set up this jig or that, you know, hopefully we don't do that again. And our error ratio went way, way down because rather than just focusing on the one person,
Everybody
tell the whole team so they
from
don't all make the same mistake over time.
They all learn the same lesson. Yeah.
And I share with them how we're doing. You know, so what were our monthly sales? What were our quarterly sales? How are we doing with our goal for this year? Are we up? Are we down?
Yeah.
You know, if we have a problem and it's maybe one or two in 15 years where a customer has left us and I get feedback as to why, and sometimes it's price or something like that, you know, it's very rare, but then I want to analyze it and figure out, because I don't want this to happen again. So I share with them all the information. They know everything about the company. I pay them well. And, you know, but it's more, I look at them as equals. And I tell my customers, you know, if I'm not here, because I have one customer who's just called me 3 times since we started this interview. If I'm not here, talk to Jen. You know, she knows everything that I know, probably sometimes even more, but you're in good hands with her. I can come back and talk to you later, but don't feel like you need me in order to finish your project.
Yeah. And how do you motivate your employees? So do you give bonuses like because you're transparent with your revenue and the goals and everything? What is your method of like, do you set a goal and say, if this month we hit it, then you'll get a bonus? Or like, how does that work?
I'm more like, you know, Bobby Knight, the basketball coach. You know, I have a big whip and I just keep whipping. No, there are.
If only that worked.
No, there are bonuses. There's also, you know, days off. You know, I start to see, I watch them and I'll sit there and say, okay, she's struggling. She's frazzled today. Take tomorrow off. You're getting paid. You need a day away. And,
That's awesome.
You know, and it's when I was trying to buy a radio station back in 1990, and with the staff there, because you had a station that was failing miserably, and they were under the stress, and sometimes they weren't getting paid for weeks on end. And I looked at the office manager. I said, take tomorrow off. I said, we're going to institute this as a program. It's a mental health day. Whether you want it or not, 1 day per quarter, you just call in and say, I'm taking my mental health day. I don't need to know why. And that could be something that happened at home the night before. It could just be you're getting worn down. Just take a mental health day and, you know, come back the next day refreshed and ready to go. And they appreciate that so much because it does give them a chance to recharge.
Yep. And it's better for the business.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, those are great tips for small businesses. Don't cut corners. Like, you know, I mean, it's just a very fundamental thing that takes you a long way. And a lot of people don't understand it. And as Jim said, you know, if, you know, you made a mistake, you're going to be, you know, losing that profit for that whatever job you did. So be it.
Yep.
Because you learn from it.
Move on.
I just did a job for a gentleman, and he works at Post Hardware in Somerville, and they sell those Yeti mugs.
Yeah.
So he wanted the Yeti mug for his grandson, who was on a wrestling team at a high school in Connecticut. And it was, when I put it in the machine, because it had a handle, it kept hitting the machine, and so it screwed up the engraving. This mug cost $41.99. I know that because I bought 2 more of them. Because I couldn't call him and say, look, I screwed up, get me another mug. So I went to Post, grabbed the mug, and he goes, that's the same one you're doing for me. I said, yeah, I know, I screwed up. I got it. He goes, well, no, I'll pay for it. I go, no, you won't. You didn't make the mistake. I did. So I run that through the machine, and it does the same thing. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? So I went to the best educator of all, YouTube, and typed in, how do you engrave Yeti mugs with a handle on this particular machine? And in the first 30 seconds of the video, it was like,
that's what
and
you do.
It had an adjustment. I've had this adapter for the machine for 8 years.
But never used it.
Never knew that I could raise it up and the handle would travel freely.
Amazing.
So in the meantime, I spent $83.98 to make $20.
Yeah.
There you go.
But he will come back.
Oh, he's happy. He's very happy.
So,
See,
and customers remember that.
Absolutely.
But I have to make it right. You know, it's not their fault. If we screw up, we own it.
We own it. Absolutely. So, you know, the attention to details, the attention to getting the trustworthiness of your customers. First of all, you know, trusting yourself, be confident of who you are. That runs a long way in building your business, right? If you're not who you are, the customers are not going to appreciate who you are.
But the one thing that I take a lot of pride in is for the last 15 years, we have been the #1 trophy store in Hunterdon County. Now
I'm not surprised.
We're the only trophy store in Hunterdon County, but we're number one. And when you feel like you're number one, it builds your confidence.
It does.
Absolutely.
And you want to live up to that,
Right.
right?
And I can attest to that because I'm part of Art Venture, which is a nonprofit, and we a lot of our rewards and awards we give out for our artists, and we get all of them from Jim. And he's right on time. Everything is spick and span. And it's just a pleasure to work with him.
I appreciate that.
But I'm going to change the topic a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about adaptability in business.
Sure.
And a couple of years back, we had something called COVID hit us. Right?
What's COVID?
And it started as some virus somewhere in a remote part of the world, and it kind of transformed itself into a work seizing environment where everybody was taken aback, and it kind of modified
everything.
Everything. The way we do business, the way you talk, everything.
I was lucky with that because when we talk about Crown Trophy, and yesterday I just received the trademark on my slogan. So we say Crown Trophy, we're trophies and a whole lot more. And what we mean by that is I also have a sign shop. I do promotional materials. I do varsity jackets. I do gifts. So I have 5 business units under that Crown Trophy umbrella. So when COVID hit and they did the shutdown, they said it was 2 weeks. I told everybody, don't come for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks turned into 2 years. So I had to, let everybody go. And after in one day, I lost $60,000 worth of business.
Oh, wow.
And so this happened on March 20th. And all my winter basketball leagues, wrestling, corporate work, the future forecast with baseball league and stuff. In one day, the phone just started ringing. Cancel my order. Cancel my order. Cancel my order.
Awful.
I was like, okay. So I'm sitting there in my warehouse, and I'm looking around and saying, we're in trouble. What are we going to do? And then I looked at my large format printer, and I said, wait a minute. Now, the sign portion of my business at the time was probably 3% of my business, if that. But everybody needed these little stickers that said, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, observe social distancing, use a hand sanitizer. I go, oh, okay, I'm going to start printing them. So I start printing them, and I just started calling people. Do you need stickers? Banks everywhere. And they said, yep, give me 100, give me 100, give me 100.
Adaptability.
Right. So then a woman came in, and she was like, we're standing 6 feet apart, and she was with Temple University, the nursing program, and she says, we can't get PPE, protective equipment. I said, what do you need? She goes, the face shields. And I go, I have this laser engraver that hasn't been working for 2 weeks. So I went to Home Depot and I bought some plastic.
Amazing.
And I cut out a template for a face mask. And then I said, well, now we got the mask. How are we going to get it on their head? And I untied my sneaker and put the shoelace through it. And I said, how's that? She goes, good. But if you had something here for sweat or just to raise it. So I went back to Home Depot, got insulation, put that up there. Next thing you know, we had our prototype. And she goes, great. We got to work on that shoelace thing because you're running out of sneakers. But but now and she ordered hundreds of those that nobody could get at the time. So we kept the nursing program at Temple up and running.
Amazing. Because
they had that. And then, other hospitals heard about it. My machine was running day and night, just cutting plastic and then coming up with,
And were you profitable? Like, was this?
I was paying the rent.
Okay.
I wasn't paying myself.
Okay.
But fortunately, my wife had a job that could cover, us in that respect. My goal was to get my crew back as quickly as possible.
Sure.
But that ended up being like an 18-month, before I could bring anybody back.
Did the same people come back?
One person did. One person, I was probably 2 months shy of getting her back, but her money situation was desperate.
Sure.
She got a better job. She's been a lifelong friend, and I totally understood. She was crying, I can't come back. I said, dude, don't worry. You take care of you.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
The door's always open. If you ever want to come back, the door's always open.
Yeah.
But you got to take care of yourself. Right. And then we found out that we didn't need 8 people in the business. We were getting the job done with 2 or 3.
Wow.
And I was like, let's just keep doing this because now I'm noticing all my credit cards are paid off. All my loans are paid off. I'm paying myself. This is a good place to be. So instead of paying 8 people and having very little left at the end, now it's like we're just running leaner and smarter.
Smarter. Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. So it's a huge lesson for all the entrepreneurs out there, what Jim just outlined
Now,
about.
the follow-up to that is, as we're coming out of COVID, it's a good idea to get your knee replaced. So I got my knee replaced because we were slow. 2 weeks after I get my knee replaced, I can't stand up, and I don't know why. And I go to physical therapy, I go to a chiropractor, and this is going on for a couple of months. And finally I go to a pain management specialist, and he goes, well, you have 2 compression fractures in your back. And I go, well, what caused that? Well, if you were 500 pounds, I'd understand it. If you were 85 and had osteoporosis, I'd understand it. There's only one other reason that this would be happening, and it's a disease called multiple myeloma. It's a blood cancer. I said, okay, more and more testing, and finally I get the diagnosis. So now I have to go through chemotherapy. I had to have a stem cell transplant. I was out of the office for 3 months.
Oh my God.
What kept the place running and thriving was Jen, who works in my office, and she basically ran the place, her and my nephew, all that summer of 21, because I'm sitting here trying to rebuild my strength and everything and get back, to feeling among the living. But they ran that business, and part of that was the training that they had and the commitment that they had to the business. They didn't want to let me down, and I was like, just keep it open. When I come back, I'll fix anything. And maybe they made 2 glaring mistakes that cost us some money, but I'll take that, compared to losing the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's a very compelling story there, Jim, with you being diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And I've been in the cancer world for a number of years, more than 30 years, and I know what that means, because both my mom passed away, of course, after 30 years of breast cancer, fighting breast cancer, and my wife is a cancer survivor. So I know what that means to not only to yourself but the family around you, and now you're running a business. So a lesson.
What was funny was, as it pertains to business, and if we all remember the gentleman who owned Flemington Car and Truck Country, Steve Califer, he had brain cancer 30 years ago. And when it was announced that he had cancer, and it was kind of like a rumor, Steve's sick, it hurt the business tremendously. And he was going all over the world looking for treatments and everything, and he had the resources to do that. But it was hurting the business. So the same thing started happening with me. A good friend of mine called me up and he said, hey, I'm really sorry that you got cancer and you have to sell the business. I said, I'm not selling the business. He goes, oh, good, I'll tell people. Calls me up a couple of weeks later. He goes, geez, I'm really sorry that the cancer's gotten that bad that you're closing the business. I said, I'm not closing the business. He calls me up a couple of weeks later. He goes, you're going to love this one. Really sorry to hear that you're closing the business because you died. And I go, okay, we got a problem. So now I have to come out publicly. And when you get a diagnosis like that, it's probably something that you want to keep to yourself.
Of course.
And so I had to go publicly. There was a press release, social media like crazy. I'm not dead yet, and I'm like, I'm still here. Even with 16 rounds of chemo, I missed a day and a half of work as a result.
God, wow.
What put me on the sidelines was a stem cell transplant, and that knocked me out for like 2.5 months. But I had to get in front of it, and I had to control the message. And when you talk about marketing and when you talk about sales and you talk about running a business, you have to control the message. Don't let anybody talk for you. Don't let people, even if there's, like, when you see these Yelp reviews, oh, I don't like this restaurant, the chicken parm didn't have enough cheese, it's like, big deal. Try it again. Go back. Maybe I had an off night. But when you get either a negative review or you have to get in front of something, it could be a supply chain issue. You couldn't meet a deadline. You control the narrative. I'm the one calling the customer saying, here's my problem. Here's my proposed solution, parentheses S, how we can make this better. But, to let the world, let the rumor mill close my business, that wasn't going to happen. And then when you mentioned COVID, I treated that like an opponent. And if a competitor came into Flemington or anywhere in Hunterdon County, opened up a trophy store, and they beat me on service, they beat me on price, they beat me on quality, I will resign and say, you win. I looked at COVID like an invisible foe. And it's like, I can't see you, so I don't know where to punch you, but, I have to fight you every day to keep my business open. And so, I just got up every morning, put my clothes on and said, okay, we got to go beat this guy. And it took, 2 years to beat it, but, we came out on the other end, we were down, as far as sales, we were down the last 3 years, from 20 to 23, we were down like 80%. And then last year we were up 33%. So I'm glad to see the arrow go in the
Going up.
opposite
Yeah.
direction.
Right.
And so, when now, of course, marketing, bring that
Absolutely.
one up and kind of, take your lead on that with you bringing that up. What types of channel, when you're thinking about scaling, you realized that you had systems in place where you could actually cut down on expenses for your team and everything, but at the same time, you're kind of ramping up your sales. What marketing channels have you been using that you find most effective for growing the business?
I've done everything from, in 15 years, I've done everything from newspaper ads, cable TV ads. And it was, the thing with cable TV was, people say, hey, I saw your ad today. Great. But they didn't buy anything.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw your ad in the Democrat. But
Brand
they didn't buy
awareness.
anything.
Yeah.
Where I am most successful right now is word of mouth. We encourage our customers, if you liked us, and they'll come in and they'll, oh, that's beautiful. I love it. This is the greatest thing. They'll take a picture. They'll send it to their friend. That's what I want you to do. Tell all your friends and neighbors about us, because word of mouth referral, can't remember who said it first. Oh, P.T. Barnum. He said the best form of advertising is a satisfied customer with a big mouth.
Yeah.
And I love that. And so the same thing, I use social media. So we're on Facebook. I have 3 or 4 different pages there. I use LinkedIn. I use Twitter, because if you just follow the trends, if you look back, over the last 30 years, how many newspapers have gone out of business? How many magazines have gone out of business? How many people are using their DVR or watching Netflix rather than broadcast television?
Right.
So I kind of follow the trend. And, we had a great one last week where, people were coming in and saying, do you engrave the Stanley Cup? And I'm like, no, I don't know who does that. I think it's the Hockey Hall of Fame. They're like, oh. And I'm like, are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, the 40-ounce Stanley Cup.
Oh my God, my daughter just got one. I'm
And
like, this is $45. What is
Right.
wrong with people?
And I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, I can engrave that Stanley Cup. But it made for one of the best social media posts that we've ever done, because I just came out and I
We
headlined
engraved the
it.
Stanley Cup.
I headlined it, an apology from Jim Gano. So that's got people
Like,
questioning,
what did he do?
what's he sorry for? And it was just one line. I apologized to all the customers who asked if we engraved the Stanley Cup, and when I told you no, because this is what I was thinking, and I showed the big silver Stanley
Yeah.
Cup. I didn't know that you were thinking this, and then I showed the
brand.
40 ounce, and also people like, that's hysterical. That's the best thing I've ever seen.
Awesome.
It was creating that
Right.
buzz,
Buzz.
and got a lot of shares from it, and that's just people will tell me, I don't always read your newsletter, but it's nice that when it comes in, because it reminds me that you're there, so that when I do need my awards,
Yep.
I'll come to you.
That's
Come to you.
nurturing.
Right, right.
That's
It's
nurturing.
that front of mind presence.
But if I can make a remark or comment on your authenticity when you put that
I
thing
was
on, right?
just going to bring that up.
Yeah, you being authentic of who you were, and
Right.
you didn't your wavelength was not same when you talked about Stanley Cup. It's
Yep.
and that's what I think resonated with people. So,
And authenticity in 2024, that's what
Yes.
all the big digital marketers are saying is going to sell. Authenticity. Be honest, be
Yep.
vulnerable, tell your story, lessons learned, talk about your failures.
Yeah.
None of us are perfect.
Right.
We don't live linear lives.
Yeah.
We all twist and turn to somehow reach our goals. And that means that we fail and we learn lessons.
Right, exactly.
And that's how, being authentic, I think more people know me as me through social media than whether they were my best friend for the last 30 years or something like that, because I just put it all out there, and I don't care whether it's, and sometimes I'll make it funny, like, we get a snow day and we get 1 to 3 inches or something like that. And I'll say, well, I'll put a post up, and I'll show like Buffalo, New York, where you got 8 feet of snow.
Yes.
I say, just finished the driveway. I'm heading to work. If we'll be open at 9:30, and they're like, "How much snow did you get?" It's just make it fun.
Yeah,
yeah.
of course.
But it's also, I'm the same as them.
Yeah.
And
It
we
puts
all,
in
like I said,
perspective.
we all make mistakes and stuff. I'm willing to own them, and then just
Move along.
be me. And if that makes you feel like you know me, and I think it was John Wanamaker who said, or maybe Sam Walton, who said, people will do business with people they trust.
Yes,
exactly.
And that's going to help
absolutely.
build that
Yeah.
trust.
Do you have a marketing budget, like a certain percentage of your sales, or what? How does that work for you?
The funny thing right now is that marketing, for the most part, is free.
Yeah, just time.
I can just do Facebook. I can do everything I want. I did spend $500, and you'll each be getting one of these later, but I spent $500 this week on getting personalized M&Ms
Ooh.
in the blue, white, and gold of Crown Trophy, because this is our 15th year.
Oh, that's
so
amazing.
And I put a little tag on it, says we're celebrating 15 years in business, and for that we thank you, our loyal customers. And then it's got the 15 on it. So on the M&M, one of them says thank you, one of them has our logo cup, one of them says Crown Trophy, and the third one says 15 years.
Why did you choose M&Ms?
Because I love M&Ms.
Good choice.
But it was just something that I figured that we could hand out. This is something that can be dropped in your purse. It could put it in your shirt pocket.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hand you a Stanley mug,
A Stanley
because
cup.
they're expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
But so little things like that. It's a little promotional item, and we specialize in promotional items as well. So I know what works and what doesn't.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
And I don't want this to end up. I don't want to give you something that I know is going to end up in the junk drawer.
Yes.
I want you to think of it. And you may eat these M&Ms when you walk out of here, but then the next time you buy M&Ms at the store,
You'll think
remember
of it.
when Jim gave me that?
Yeah.
book?"
Yeah, exactly.
Very true.
But your authenticity comes out. Like, Desiree asked the question, why M&M's? I
Because
like
you
it.
love them. And so that's all about you. I love that.
I'm just hoping
And
that
we'll remember that.
I'm just hoping that I'm going to give this to the whole box to my staff. Here, put these little tags on them and hide them because
There you go.
Exactly, because I want them.
There you go. There you
Don't
go.
give them away.
I mean, you don't make life too complex.
No.
I mean, that's one of my major things in life. Don't make it too complicated. Be who you are.
Yep.
You attract people of that get attracted to your philosophy and who you are. So
That's
stay
it.
put. But I got to ask you this question: with everything that's going on in your life, with diagnosis multiple myeloma. You had your knee
Kids.
surgeries, COVID,
Yeah.
shutting down the business, losing $60,000 a day. Do you have like a work-life balance?
Oh,
Is
How?
that even a question?
Yeah, I mean, I get that question a lot. And being an author, when you're writing a book, and I'm in my third book now, I devote hopefully at least 2 hours a day to that.
Okay.
It does not come at a time when I should be focusing on my wife. When my children were home, I did it like 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And I don't
Okay.
mind if I get 4 hours of sleep if the book gets done, but I'm not taking away from family time. What eventually got me out of being one of the announcers for the Patriots was my kids were starting to play baseball. And I was like, I'd rather be on their sideline than on the Patriots
Yeah.
sideline.
Yeah.
So I walked away, from that one, and it was probably the most fun job I've ever had. But it was like, I just have to compartmentalize my time,
Right.
and even with announcing, So my wife is going out to dinner with her friends tomorrow night. I have a game Friday, and I just let her know in advance. Look, Friday I'm 7 to 9. I'm going to be at the gym. Then we get a makeup game,
Yeah.
and it's like so. I have a makeup game next Monday. Tuesday I have a Hall of Fame meeting. Thursday I've got another game. So that's what our winter season is.
Yeah.
And then our fall season we've got 5 Friday nights when I'm at the football field. So as long as everybody manages the expectations, we're good.
But you essentially, whatever you carve out your time, you're there. You're not doing 10,000 different things
Right.
at that time.
Yeah, you're focused
I'm
on
focused.
your present.
Right. I'm focused
You're
on what I'm
present.
working on now.
You're present, whatever you're doing.
Yep.
So,
And even with the cancer diagnosis, it was I had to walk away from basketball announcing because I couldn't be around crowds and germs, which killed me. And I gave up positions on boards because I said, look, if I can't contribute, I don't want to just be a
Be
name
part.
on the letterhead. And so I picked up. I'm a big sports junkie, if you didn't notice that. And so my mantra throughout all of my what do you call that? I guess treatment. Yeah. Was the theme from Friday Night Lights, clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. And, jab the needle in my arm, put the poison in my veins, and, and I'm sitting there going, clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. And, I ended up getting challenge coins made that I handed out to the nurses and the doctors and family and friends that supported me throughout that. And the one nurse that I still see, every 3 months at Hackensack, every time she sees me, she creates her work schedule so she knows when I'm coming in, she's there.
That's
oh, wow.
And every time I see her, out of her pocket comes that coin, and it's just a great reminder. But I had to reprioritize everything. So, and it wasn't Crown still had an important part. My family had an important part, but my healing also had an important. So
part.
all the extra stuff had to go away
Yep.
until I could come back.
Prioritize.
That's perfect. I know you talked a lot. I mean, this was one of the more fascinating interviews that been part of. So thank you. But any advice for? I know you gave a lot, but any focused advice to young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general?
Yep. First of all, you got to know that, the work is, in the beginning, is hard. You're starting everything. I have a rule, and I've said this for years, and I call it my rule number one. And I've presented this to Crown Trophy franchisees at meeting. I present it to other companies when I meet with them. Rule number one is what I call ABP, which stands for always be promoting. And that means if you're in an elevator and someone says, what do? You better have that 30-second spiel ready to go. You're at a cocktail party. And the funny thing is, like, you go to a cocktail, what do? I'm a doctor. Well, great, genius.
What does that
What
mean?
kind of doctor?
Exactly.
I got
Give a
a
little
bum
more.
foot
Elaborate.
here. Are you an orthopedic? Are you a neurosurgeon? Are you a heart surgeon? You got to be able to sell yourself. And in any industry, and I will challenge everybody. And when I make this comment, sometimes you get a little question mark look, and other times you're right. I don't care if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a plumber, a trophy guy, the guy who runs the deli counter at ShopRite. Always be promoting. The doctors are competing with other doctors. Who's the best doctor? Who's the best plumber? Who's the best lawyer? Who's the best electrician? You know what they call the guy who graduates last in medical school? A doctor. But I don't want him. I don't want him. I want the guy who didn't go to the party on Friday night, who has no bedside manner.
Not hungover.
Right, but he's the best, knee surgeon or whatever.
Yeah.
And so prepare yourself for long hours. Always be promoting your business. Work harder than everybody else. But the one thing in any business is twofold. One, follow the masters. And that is find the people who have been doing
this. Yeah.
And who are doing it well. And copy them and learn from them. And take them out to dinner.
No need to reinvent the wheel, right?
Take them out to dinner. Take them out to lunch. Pick their brain. And then also never stop learning.
Right.
You can open a business and think you know it all.
Oh,
and I
absolutely.
can say the same thing.
You learned with the Stanley Cup thing, right?
But my technology has changed from rotary engraving to laser engraving to sandblasting to the Stanley Cup. Always be willing to learn. If there's certifications in your field, get them. Become the expert. Become the people that people are going to come to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And be that way.
And what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind with your business?
I've said this a lot on different interviews, and I truly mean it. And I didn't have enough time to talk about it today, but I work with Hunter and Central with their workplace readiness program and the Achieve program for the handicapped kids. I hope that someday when I'm gone, that people will, when they think of me, they'll say, he made a difference, either in those kids' lives or in somebody's life, even a customer's life. I had a customer one time come into my office. She was ordering a trophy, and then she just broke down crying. I'm like, "What's the matter?" And it was, a family problem. And I was like, "Oh, shut the door. Well, let's talk about it. Here's some tissues and stuff like that." And it took 20 minutes, where I could have just said, "Okay, I got your order. Get the hell out of here." And here's a tissue. But I want people to think, when they think of me, that somehow I made a difference in their life.
Right.
I love it. And how can people get a hold of you?
Email is jim@crowntrophy152.com. Phone number is 908-782-1476. Website is crowntrophy.com/store-152, or just stop in and say hi. Maybe you'll go home with some M&Ms.
And where's the address of the store?
It's 15 Main Street, so it's the Flemington Post Office building. They're on the right side. The office suites are on the left.
Awesome.
And also, as I mentioned earlier, when we introduced Jim Gano, he has the podcast, which I encourage everybody to listen to.
Taking Care of
Business with Jim Gano every Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern time.
And I want to thank you guys for this opportunity. This was a lot of fun.
This is a lot of fun. I know we got maybe another 30 seconds. I do have to have a quick question for you. And that is, I know you do a lot of giving. How important, if you can summarize that part, how important is giving as part of your philosophy in business?
It's just, it's part of doing business, and I give to those that I believe in. We'll get letters all the time, sponsor this team, sponsor that team.
Right.
A lot of times I'm more about the cause. And like, I'm working now with the Marissa Tafaro Foundation, and they help, the father actually had multiple myeloma. That's how we connected.
Okay.
His daughter died after 13 years and 6 heart surgeries and everything. And so, but their mission is so aligned with how I feel
right.
that I'm like, I'll volunteer. I'll give you all the awards for free, but it's got to, I don't want to just write checks. I just want
there
to
needs
know that we're
meaning
making a
Something
difference.
meaningful.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Lovely.
Any other last words?
Always be promoting.
There you go.
I love it.
and just work harder than all of your competition and do everything they won't. And one thing that I didn't get to say, but if you want to be different in business, or if you want to be better in business, I always say be different to be remembered. Sometimes just this little M&M pack makes me different because they're not getting it anywhere else. Do more than everybody else and you'll succeed.
Awesome.
Jim, this was absolutely fascinating. Thank you
Jim.
for your mentorship. And I know
We can make this episode 1. I'll just keep coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love
We would
it.
love to have you
We
back.
will certainly not run out of things to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. So thank you again. And
Very good. Thank you.
Desiree, take us home.
Absolutely. So, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know we went over probably a minute. Please tune in to our next episode in 2 weeks from now on how to strategically optimize your business. So it'll kind of be a spin-off from our last episode with goal setting. You can find us on our website at conversionchronicle.com without an S at the end, conversionchronicle.com. You can join our newsletter so that you can see the upcoming episodes. And please like us on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can find our previous episodes on Facebook or on Spotify. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.